I know that the Phoenix Suns have kind of been in a bit of a wreck since after they lost to the Nuggets in quite the fashion that they did.
Oh
And they
my.
might be wanting to switch things up. You could maybe reunite Chris Paul with James Harden, maybe go after Deontay Ayton? But
Ayton.
overall, I think the Suns is somebody that, or a team that we should be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, my heart really goes out for these guys, especially as a Jazz fan, because it wasn't too long ago that we were the best team in the NBA, and we just got like rolled over by the Celtics, or not the Celtics, by the Clippers, without Kawhi Leonard. For them to get smashed in Game 7 by the Mavericks and then just get suffocated by Denver this year, there's a lot of turmoil there. Per Tim McMahon, who works for ESPN, he actually came out and stated that he heard from one of their insiders from their front office that they are going to be shopping Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton. And honestly, I don't blame them. I think that what they proved to me, at least in this postseason, was they don't actually need Chris Paul anymore. Chris Paul has been a more developmental piece for them. He made them relevant when they were, entering a very nasty playoff drought. I mean, Devin Booker was drafted in 2014. He didn't make the playoffs for the first 5 years of his career. It wasn't until they got Chris Paul that they went from not making the playoffs to being in the finals in the NBA, and then having the best record in the NBA. So, and I think all of that was a direct contribution from Chris Paul and his leadership and his mentorship. However, the saying, water is wet, and Chris Paul will be hurt in the postseason. That's just kind of how it always is. This year was no different. I don't know what they're going to get back for Chris Paul, especially because his contract is hefty. I think you'd have to unload him somewhere else. But I do think that you take, if you're Houston, you take an absolute look at Ayton. Because Ayton brings you a guy who can get you rebounds. And my favorite thing about him is the fact that you don't have to run plays for this guy, and he's still going to get you 17 and 10 a night. When you have ball-dominant guys like Devin Booker and Kevin Durant kind of playing back and forth the way they did, it was really a two-man game. Ayton was still putting up numbers. I wish we could have said that about Rudy Gobert when he was here in Utah. But Ayton is always going to get his numbers. He cleans up the glass really well. He could be a little tougher on defense. I think he'd fit well in Houston. I think he does need to change of pace, though, for sure.
Well, now hold on here, Doc. First off, with Chris Paul, I definitely think that Chris Paul would have made a difference. And I mean, I know that's not what you're saying, but you're saying that maybe they weren't there. It shows that they don't really need him anymore because he's been injured. Well, They lost, I thought, in a terrible fashion. They were down 30 points at the half in their final game. How do you lose by that much with having Devin Booker, who's one of the most efficient, if not the most efficient guy in the playoffs, who was leading in points per game, as well as having a guy named Kevin Durant? And with Deontay Ayton, is it Deontay?
It's Deontay.
Deontay Ayton.
I think you're thinking of DeAndre Jordan.
Yeah. Well, I know Deontay Ayton. But the thing is with Ayton, it's a terrible performance. In fact, I saw in one of the games that Ayton was in a huddle with Booker. Booker's kind of getting into it, trying to talk to everybody, especially Ayton. And then Ayton just walks out. He just doesn't care. I heard he got into it with Monty Williams. Williams is a player's coach, a guy that, basically everybody loves. He seems to be kind of a toxic guy. And I know that the Suns were trying to trade Ayton, but they ended up, they got him, they kept him with that huge contract of his. I think it's going to be tough for somebody to really want to keep a max contract guy who, he can put up 17 and 10. I know he did that overall, in the season. It's pretty good. I just don't think he's a max contract caliber player. And I think maybe teams will notice that. But, I want to put some of the blame on Ayton. I want to put some of the blame, on the team, on the coaching, the owner as well for the lack of depth of the team. But I want to say I want to put a lot of the blame on Kevin Durant.
Ooh.
Now,
All right.
KD, I think KD is a special player. In fact, if you clock back a few years ago, he's probably the best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
Is he that right now? I don't know. I think that he still puts up really great numbers. He's very, very efficient. But what I saw from him in the playoffs and what I see from him consistently in the playoffs is that he gets knocked out, in the first or second round. And, he did have some decent numbers against the Nuggets. But I just want to point out that he was only shooting in those final games 40%. He only took, he didn't have a 3-point make in the final 2 games. It's like, here's the thing. You cannot beat Father Time, and Kevin Durant is getting older. For the Suns to have made such a robust trade, to acquire Kevin Durant, I think that in hindsight it looks good because he's such a great player, but I think overall it was not a good trade. And I think that, they're missing such a huge piece of depth to their team. Mikal Bridges, who is, averaging something like 26, 27 since being traded. You got Cam Thomas, who is averaging 18 in the playoffs. Those are great guys. You give up all of your draft picks to get this guy. And he's old. He's getting older. And he's been injury prone. I do still think the guy's incredible. I think he's going to put up good numbers next year. But at the same time, I think he's going to be injured. And I think the Suns are going to be dropped out in the first or second round.
This is where I'm going to disagree with you because I hear what you're saying. And it's very well put together. But Kevin Durant isn't to blame here. Did Kevin Durant ask to be traded? Yeah, he did, right? And he asked to go to Phoenix too. But Kevin Durant still, even though his efficiency dipped a little bit, he was averaging 29 points per game through the postseason. The guy who wasn't there when they needed him was Chris Paul. And Monty Williams, as much as I love Monty, he didn't really make any adjustments that they needed to make. Also, the front office, in terms of the max contract for DeAndre, now I'm doing it, for Ayton, DA, the Pacers offered him that contract because they saw some value in him. They wanted him. The Suns could have let him walk. They absolutely could have let him walk, but they signed him to that. So I think it's more of a front office issue personally. And I would just start cleaning house if I was the owner. But I would also absolutely shop around Chris Paul. I would shop around Ayton to see what you can get. Maybe you can swap Ayton with Turner. Miles Turner is not very happy in Indiana. He went on a podcast like halfway through the season and was trying to lobby to get the Lakers to trade for him. I don't know how you don't get in trouble for something like that, but hey, it is what it is. But maybe both of those teams can come to some sort of agreement and just swap one for one. I think Turner's a better defender, and I think that he can spread the floor way better than Ayton can. But I think, and in terms of trying to shop Chris Paul, you're not going to get nearly, the haul like that you would be hoping for. But let's say you take a couple of non-favorable contracts for some guys who are pretty decent role players. Maybe you can get your hands on Duncan Robinson, okay, with the Heat.
He's expensive. He
is. But at this point in his career, he's the spot-up shooter and can provide the depth that they're kind of looking for, Davis Bertans is another spot-up shooter. They just need some guys who are going to help them defend, who are going to shoot the ball and give them production outside of Booker and Kevin Durant. It can't be 2 versus 5 out there.
Yeah. Well, I think, what I'm trying to say here is I know that KD is still incredible. He's a great talent, but I just do not think he's the player that he was. I don't think that he is a top 5 player anymore in the NBA. And I got to be honest, I think that's like, okay, we've got Embiid, we've got Giannis, Jokic, maybe Steph and Luka right there. Maybe he's not even a top player. Like Butler, Tatum. He's got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's an up-and-coming incredible player.
Yeah,
He
Donovan
was
Mitchell.
first team, maybe Donovan. Although I'd probably take KD. I don't know, but he's up there. I would probably take Booker over him too. LeBron.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
So I mean, KD, he's still an incredible talent, but I
Mhm.
think you're gonna need much more depth, in order to pull this off than maybe you would have initially thought. He's not 30 anymore. He's not 28. He's 35. He's probably going to be injured, and he's still great, but I think Booker's the number one guy.
Oh, I don't think there's any debate that Booker's the number one guy. And I think KD likes playing alongside someone who can say hi.
I swear that saw the bug in that room.
Okay, I'll come check in a second. Hold on, I'm almost done. And I think KD is at a place where he doesn't mind passing off a lot of the load to a younger, efficient superstar like Booker. But I think you got him for 4 years. I don't think he is the same player. I agree. But I think he's good enough to where if you retool this team and you get some sort of value for Chris Paul and you maybe swap Ayton for Turner, I really think Miles Turner would help anchor their defense. I mean, he's been multiple perennial DPOY candidates over his career. Like, he's a guy who can anchor your defense. That's what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant need so they offensively can create the production that they do, So if you can find a couple guys and make the salaries work for Chris Paul, I think they have a shot.